She perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. Hallie Vasquez sat near the back of the reception hall, beside a floral arrangement that reeked of too much lavender and false celebration. No one looked her way. No one ever did. The clinking of champagne glasses, the blur of laughter and silk dresses, the quiet melodies of the string quartet, it all washed over her like a tide she was never meant to swim in.
She was used to this.
She'd even dressed the part, sleek black satin, subtle makeup, her thick dark hair tied in a chignon that said elegant instead of please look closer. Her chair, a sleek matte black design custom-built to blend rather than shine, rested quietly beneath her like it was ashamed of itself. Her hands folded neatly on her lap. Her mouth wore a practiced, polite smile. And inside, she was counting the minutes until she could leave. This was her cousin's wedding, after all. Family.
Blood.
But even blood had a way of turning transparent when people didn't know what to say around you. Or when they said too much, too cheerfully, too loudly, and then looked away with pity sparkling behind their eyes. Hallie had built empires, crashed glass ceilings with diamond wheels. Her name could move markets, collapse competitors. But in rooms like this, she was still just the woman in the chair. Alone. Watching. Invisible. She took another sip of her champagne, letting the bubbles sting the inside of her mouth, just to feel something. That's when she saw her. Across the room. Spinning away from a crowd of relatives, laughing too brightly, her dress the color of wildfire and rebellion. Catherine Morales. The bride's new sister-in-law. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Hallie hadn't officially met her yet. She'd only heard snippets, graphic designer, independent, a bit chaotic, possibly queer, according to her cousin's whispered attempt at being inclusive. Catherine didn't walk. She glided, like the room existed around her but didn't define her. Her smile wasn't polite. It was sharp, alive, like it could split open the air and let the truth in. Hallie stared longer than she meant to. Catherine noticed. For a second, their eyes met. And Hallie panicked, immediately looking down at the champagne in her hand like it held the secrets to gravity.
Footsteps approached. Heels.
Purposeful. And then a voice, soft but firm, edged with curiosity and something warmer. Are you planning to sit here all night, or do you want to cause a little trouble with me? Hallie looked up startled. Catherine was right there. Close enough to smell jasmine and vanilla. Close enough to see the dusting of freckles on her cheekbones and the confidence in the tilt of her head. Hallie blinked. Excuse me? I asked. Catherine repeated, grinning. If you be my date. For the night. I'm bored to death and you look like you could use an escape route. Hallie stared. You don't even know me. Not yet, Catherine said, then leaned in slightly. But I noticed you weren't pretending. Everyone else here is pretending to be someone they're not. You're just watching. That's interesting. Hallie's throat tightened. She didn't do spontaneous. She didn't do flirty strangers. She didn't do weddings. But something in Catherine's gaze was disarming in the most dangerous way. I don't dance, Hallie said quietly. Who said anything about dancing? Catherine smirked. Let's just talk. You and me. Somewhere less suffocating. A pause. Hallie hesitated. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to see her. Not the chair, not the billions, not the tragic contrast of beauty and brokenness everyone seemed to layer onto her like dust. Just her. All right, she said. But if this turns into some pity party, then you can roll over my foot, Catherine replied easily, extending her hand.
Deal.
Hallie stared at the hand for a beat longer than she should have, then took it. The warmth of Catherine's fingers shocked her.
Real.
Firm. No hesitation. No awkwardness. Just skin on skin. A promise. They maneuvered through the crowd with Catherine leading the way, carving space like she belonged there, like Hallie belonged with her. As they reached the garden terrace, Hallie realized her heart was pounding. Not from nerves. From anticipation. From something dangerously close to hope. Catherine leaned against the railing and looked at her. Really looked like she was waiting for Hallie to speak first. But Hallie didn't know how to start. "You do this often?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Pick strangers in wheelchairs as your plus one?" Catherine laughed, and it wasn't the kind of laugh people used when they were uncomfortable. It was real, unfiltered.
No.
But tonight felt like a good night to break the rules. And you didn't look like a stranger. You looked like someone worth knowing. Hallie swallowed. The night air was cool, but her skin was suddenly hot. Catherine turned to face her fully. "Tell me something real, Hallie Vasquez. Not the press release version, the you version." And Hallie, against every wall she'd built, against every instinct to keep herself guarded, heard herself say, "I hate weddings. But right now, I'm glad I came to this one." Catherine's smile softened. "Me too." And in that moment, the noise of the world faded. Just two women. A terrace. A promise hanging unspoken between them. Hallie followed Catherine down a winding stone path that led away from the lights of the reception and into the quieter, darker corners of the estate. The wedding was being held at some overpriced countryside vineyard that screamed rustic sophistication, all manicured hedges and ivy-covered terraces. Hallie had barely noticed it when she arrived. She hadn't planned on staying long enough to care. But now, trailing just behind Catherine and the soft rustle of her red dress in the breeze, the world suddenly felt full of texture and possibility. Catherine didn't talk much as they walked. She just threw the occasional glance over her shoulder to make sure Hallie was keeping up. And Hallie appreciated that. No fake concern, no over-explaining. Just two women in motion, stepping outside of a world that never quite knew what to do with either of them. They reached a secluded gazebo at the edge of the vineyard, framed by fairy lights and the deep hum of nighttime insects. A few lanterns flickered along the wooden beams, casting soft shadows on the gravel path. Catherine turned and faced her, her expression unreadable for the first time. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to just disappear for a while?" she asked. Hallie cocked her head, intrigued. "You mean like fake your death and start over kind of disappear? Or just turn off your phone for a weekend?" "Somewhere in between," Catherine said, stepping into the gazebo and perching herself on the low wooden railing. "I mean disappearing from expectations. From assumptions. From the way people look at you like they've already decided what kind of story you're allowed to have." Hallie wheeled closer, her hands tightening slightly on the rims. That question hit her like a quiet storm. "All the time," she murmured. "I built an empire just to prove I could. And yet, every room I enter, people still see the chair before they see me. If they even bother to look past it." Catherine didn't interrupt. She just watched her, calm and open, like Hallie's words mattered. Like she mattered. "What if," Catherine said slowly, "you didn't have to prove anything tonight? What if you could just be?" Hallie met her gaze, something tender and dangerous unfurling behind her ribs. "I don't know who I am when I'm not proving something," she admitted. Catherine smiled, soft and slow. "Then let's find out. Together." The way she said it, like an invitation, not a challenge, made Hallie's stomach twist with something that felt a lot like longing. A silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed. It breathed. "So, what about you?" Hallie asked, needing to shift the spotlight. "You glide through that reception like you own the damn place, but then you run out here like you're hiding. What are you escaping from?" Catherine leaned back, staring up at the stars. A family that talks over each other and never listens. A million expectations about who I should be dating, what kind of job I should have, how I should be more like my perfect brother. And tonight, a wedding that feels more like a performance than a celebration. She paused, then added, "Also, my ex is here. With her new fiancé."
So there's that.
Hallie blinked.
Ouch.
"Yeah," Catherine said, letting out a breath. "So, trust me, when I saw you sitting there, elegant, alone, looking like you were quietly judging everyone, I thought, that woman gets it." Hallie laughed before she could stop herself. A real laugh. It startled her. Catherine's eyes lit up.
"There it is," she said.
"That's what I was looking for." "What?" Hallie asked, her smile still lingering. Your laugh. It's kind of addictive. Hallie shook her head, trying to reel in the flutter in her chest. You're dangerous. Only in the best ways, Catherine replied, her voice low now, velvet smooth. The distance between them suddenly felt charged. Hallie didn't move closer. She didn't have to. Catherine took a step forward, then another, until she was right in front of Hallie's chair, looking down at her with a gaze that made Hallie forget how to breathe. May I? Catherine asked, her fingers hovering near Hallie's hand, but not touching. Hallie hesitated. The last woman who'd touched her like that had also looked at her with pity wrapped in seduction. She'd never trusted a touch since. But Catherine's eyes held no pity, only curiosity and want. So Hallie nodded. Catherine's fingers found hers, warm, steady, and Hallie felt it like a current shooting straight up her spine. You're shaking, Catherine said softly. I'm not used to people touching me without expectations, Hallie replied. Or apologies. Catherine tightened her grip just enough to say you're safe. Then let me be the first to say, I'm not here out of pity or curiosity. I'm here because you're the most fascinating woman I've met in a long, long time. And I didn't want to leave tonight without knowing your voice, your mind, your laugh. Hallie swallowed hard. You barely know me. Yet, Catherine whispered. Hallie felt something snap inside her. Not break. Open. She wanted to say something, anything, but her throat was too full. Catherine, sensing the shift, gently let go and stepped back, giving her space. Come on, she said, voice light again. There's an orchard behind the vineyard. You game? I thought you wanted to escape the wedding, not get lost in the wilderness, Hallie teased. Maybe I want to get lost with you, Catherine replied, throwing her a wink. And just like that, Hallie wheeled forward, her pulse thudding, her body remembering what hope felt like. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to leave early. She was chasing the night. The orchard was quieter than the garden. A dozen rows of apple trees stretched into the shadows, their branches heavy with late summer fruit, the air thick with the scent of sugar and earth. Moonlight dripped down through the leaves like spilled milk, softening every edge, washing the world in silver. Catherine slowed her steps as she reached the first row, turning to watch Hallie navigate the uneven path. It was gravel at first, then transitioned into dirt, uneven, slightly sloped. Not exactly built for wheels. But Hallie was used to places that weren't built for her. She handled her chair with the kind of silent precision that came from years of having no other choice. Still, Catherine's gaze lingered, not with worry, but with quiet admiration. You okay? She asked, her voice low, no trace of condescension. I've done boardroom presentations while in post-surgical pain and negotiating with oil executives, Hallie muttered, pushing over a root. I think I can handle an apple tree or two. Catherine smiled, falling into step beside her. You always like to lead with your resume? Old habits, Hallie said. Sometimes it's easier to talk about the empire than the body. Catherine didn't flinch. But I'm not asking about the empire. I'm asking about you. Hallie turned her face away, pretending to study the trees. Why? Because I like the way you think, the way you speak, the way you don't try to shrink yourself to make people comfortable. Hallie laughed, dry and bitter. You're assuming I have the option to shrink. Catherine stopped walking.
No.
I'm saying you refuse to make yourself small for a world that doesn't know how to hold you. The words settled on Hallie's skin like warm hands. She looked at Catherine then, really looked, at the firelight in her eyes, the storm beneath her calm. You're too poetic for someone who escaped a wedding. Blame the orchard, Catherine said, stepping closer. It's the moonlight. It makes everything feel like a secret. Hallie's chair came to a gentle stop beside one of the wider trees, its roots carving a curve into the ground. She braced her hand on the trunk for balance and adjusted her posture. The effort was small but deliberate, and Catherine noticed. Not the movement, but the ownership of it. I don't know what this is, Hallie said, her voice softer now. But it's fast. And I don't do fast. We don't have to name it, Catherine replied. We just have to feel it. There was a long beat. Then Hallie whispered, "I feel it." Catherine stepped in. Just one step, enough to close the space between them. She didn't lean,
Didn't grab.
just stood close enough for Hallie to feel the heat of her. "May I?" Catherine asked again, always asking, always waiting. Hallie's pulse raced. "Yes." Catherine reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind Hallie's ear. Her fingers were feather-light, reverent. Hallie exhaled slowly. "Why me?" she asked. "Tonight, of all people, of all places, why walk toward the woman in the corner?" Catherine's hand dropped, but her eyes never wavered. "Because I saw you, and I didn't want to look away." Their faces were inches apart, the air between them charged and trembling. Catherine leaned in. Hallie tilted her chin. Their lips were about to meet, and then the unmistakable crunch of footsteps on dry leaves. They both froze. Catherine turned first, her body instinctively shifting to block Hallie's from view. A figure emerged from the darkness between the trees, a tall woman in a tight emerald dress, clutching a half-empty wine glass like a weapon. Her hair was perfect. Her smile wasn't. "Well, the woman said, her voice slick with alcohol and something sour. "If it isn't the elusive Catherine Morales. And look at that. She found herself a pet project." Hallie's stomach dropped. Catherine's expression turned to stone. "Not now, Naomi." "Oh, I think now is the perfect time," Naomi replied, taking another step closer. "I mean, I've been watching you slink around this party all night, and I just knew you'd end up somewhere dramatic. But this..." She looked Hallie up and down. "Really, Cat?" Hallie's hands tightened on her wheels. Catherine's jaw clenched. "You're drunk. And you're desperate," Naomi snapped. "God, it's pathetic. You couldn't stand seeing me with Danny, so now you're out here making eyes at..." "Stop," Catherine said sharply. Naomi blinked. "What?"
Leave. Now. Why?
"Is she going to run me over?" Naomi smirked. Hallie's breath caught. But before she could say a word, Catherine stepped fully in front of her, voice low and lethal. "You don't get to talk to her like that. You don't get to look at her like that. Not after what you did to me. Not after the way you made me feel small for years, just so you could feel big." Naomi faltered. The wine sloshed in her glass.
Wow.
"So she's your savior now? Your little trauma cleanser?" "No," Catherine said. "She's the first person who made me want to be seen again. And you're not ruining that." Silence fell.
Thick.
Cold. Then Naomi laughed, bitter and brittle. "You always were dramatic," she said, then tossed the rest of her wine into the grass and turned away. "Good luck, Cat. You're gonna need it." When she disappeared into the dark, Catherine let out a slow breath and turned back to Hallie. "I'm sorry." Hallie was quiet. Her eyes were unreadable. "Is she your ex?" "Was," Catherine said. "A long time ago. It was toxic. I was a mess." Hallie nodded slowly. "She still knows how to hit your wounds." "She's good at that," Catherine admitted. "But you made me feel like I could breathe again. And I didn't want a night to end like that." Hallie studied her. The tension, the fear, the honesty. And slowly, she reached out, taking Catherine's hand.
"It hasn't ended yet," she said.
Catherine smiled, shaky but real. "Then let's start over." "Okay," Hallie whispered. "Let's start here." They re-entered the house under a canopy of strained silence and lingering adrenaline. Catherine's hand remained loosely intertwined with Hallie's as they moved back toward the reception area, which had quieted considerably. The drunken chaos of the early evening had mellowed into soft jazz and scattered conversations, with only the truly intoxicated still spinning on the dance floor. The scent of champagne and frosting hung heavy in the air. Hallie hated the way her heart was still pounding. Not because of Naomi's words, though they'd burned, but because of how much she cared that Catherine had stood up for her. It had been so long since anyone had chosen her. Not because they had to. Not out of guilt or social obligation. But simply because they wanted to. Catherine didn't glance around nervously as they passed through the lingering crowd. She didn't shrink or avoid eye contact. She walked beside Hallie like she belonged there. Like they belonged there. And that did something to Hallie's ribs that no billionaire meeting, no empire, no victory ever had. It made her feel visible, wanted.
Scene.
I think we need drinks, Catherine muttered, nodding toward the bar. And maybe something stupid to distract us. Stupid? Hallie asked, arching a brow. You don't strike me as the reckless type. Catherine grinned. You haven't seen me after wedding cake. They reached the bar, and Catherine ordered them both a glass of champagne. Hallie rarely drank more than a sip or two in public. Liquor made her skin feel unpredictable, her body a little less manageable. But tonight wasn't public. Tonight felt private, even in a crowd. She accepted the glass. So, what's your idea of stupid? She asked, taking a small sip. Catherine's eyes flicked toward the far side of the hall, where a group of guests had gathered around a low table filled with half-empty glasses and cards. They're playing Truth or Dare. Hallie narrowed her eyes. Are we in high school? Emotionally? Probably. Catherine grinned. Come on. We won't stay long. We'll just blend in, pretend to be mildly social, and then slip out again when everyone's too tipsy to notice. You're very bad at pretending to be boring, Hallie said, but followed her anyway. As they approached the circle, someone shouted, New blood, and made room. A few of the guests, mostly in their 20s, a mix of cousins, friends of the groom, a couple of overly enthusiastic bridesmaids, cheered as Catherine and Hallie joined the group. No one said anything about the chair. No one stared. Whether out of distraction or decency, Hallie didn't know, but she was grateful for the momentary anonymity. Catherine introduced them both simply. This is Hallie. She's smarter than all of us. Be warned. Hallie rolled her eyes but smiled. They sat, Catherine cross-legged on a cushion, Hallie just beside her, her hands on her wheels, back straight. The game began innocently enough. Silly dares. Embarrassing truths. Who kissed who? Who snuck off during the rehearsal dinner? Who secretly hated the best man? Hallie kept quiet, content to observe. Catherine was magnetic, laughing easily, her eyes flicking to Hallie now and then with a quiet heat that made Hallie's spine tingle. Eventually, someone turned to Hallie. A woman in pink heels and a high ponytail. Your turn, she said, grinning. Truth or dare? Hallie hesitated. Truth. Boo, someone teased. Too safe. Let her live, Catherine said, smirking. The woman in pink leaned forward. Okay, Hallie. What's the most reckless thing you've ever done for love? The question hung in the air like smoke. Hallie's fingers curled slightly against her chair. Her jaw tightened. Catherine looked at her gently, sensing the shift. I built someone a company, Hallie said quietly. From the ground up. Funded every dollar. Gave her power she didn't earn. Trusted her with everything.
Wow, someone said.
What happened? Hallie looked down at her hands.
She left.
Took half of it. And told the press I was too broken to run anything without her. The silence that followed was heavy. Catherine's eyes darkened. You don't have to. I want to, Hallie said, looking at her. Because if you're going to keep asking to see me, then I need to stop hiding the parts that still sting. Catherine nodded once, like a promise. Then I'm going next, she said, her tone sharper now. Truth. Someone leaned in. Catherine, have you ever fallen in love with someone you weren't supposed to? Catherine didn't look away from Hallie. Yes. Who? The bridesmaid asked eagerly. I think I'm looking at her, Catherine said. Gasps, laughter, teasing noises erupted around them, but Hallie couldn't hear any of it. Her pulse roared in her ears. Her heart stuttered in her chest. Catherine's gaze was unwavering, steady and full of something wild and real. Hallie exhaled. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse. I need air. Let's go, Catherine said immediately, rising to her feet and waiting without rushing. Hallie turned her chair and headed toward the veranda, Catherine at her side. Once they were alone, Hallie stopped. Her hands were shaking. That was too much. Catherine asked. Not from you, Hallie said. I wasn't ready. Catherine stepped closer. I didn't say it to corner you. Or pressure you. I meant it. I see you, Hallie. And it scares the hell out of me, too. Hallie met her eyes. You see me, but do you know what that means? To really be with someone like me? Someone brilliant? Gorgeous? Unapologetic?
Yeah.
I think I'm starting to. You think, Hallie said. But you don't know what it's like to need help on bad days. To be stared at.
To be dismissed.
You don't know what it's like to carry this body through a world that pretends it's not built for you. Then tell me, Catherine said softly. Let me learn. Hallie swallowed hard. Her defenses were shaking, crumbling. She didn't want this. But Catherine made it so easy. So dangerous.
So alive.
And then Catherine leaned in, slow, deliberate, asking without words this time. Hallie didn't move. Her breath caught. Catherine's lips brushed hers. Gentle, waiting. Hallie kissed her back. Finally. And it wasn't tentative. It wasn't safe. It was a declaration. A claiming. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Hallie rested her forehead against Catherine's. I'm terrified, she whispered. Catherine smiled. Me too. But I've never wanted anything more. The morning sunlight sliced through the thin hotel curtains, casting sharp lines across Hallie's face as she blinked awake. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The faint scent of roses and wood polish clung to the linens. A distant echo of laughter drifted in through the window. Brunch, maybe, or some leftover celebration from the wedding still trickling into the daylight. Then the memories came crashing back. The orchard. The game. The kiss.
Catherine.
Hallie lay still, letting it all wash over her. Her lips still tingled where Catherine had kissed her. Her chest was still tight from the weight of things she hadn't let herself feel in years. She ran a hand down her arm, grounding herself. The room was too quiet, too sharp. Reality always had a way of scraping at the edges of something beautiful. Hallie sat up slowly, maneuvering herself from the bed to her chair with practiced efficiency, her body aching in familiar, quiet ways. She didn't wince. She didn't complain. Her body was what it was. A machine she'd long ago learned to operate with precision, even when it felt fragile inside. She wheeled herself to the vanity, staring into her reflection. Her dark eyes were heavy, rimmed with the kind of vulnerability she usually kept under lock and key. She wasn't used to softness. She was used to being wanted for power, for prestige, for proximity to influence, not for the way she laughed, or the sharpness of her mind, or the shape of her mouth when she was trying not to smile. She wasn't used to someone like Catherine. Her phone buzzed. A message. Catherine Morales. Still thinking about that kiss. Can I bribe you with coffee to talk about it? Meet me in the Garden Cafe in 30? Hallie stared at the screen. Her thumbs hovered. She wasn't ready. She was too ready. She typed, then deleted, then typed again. Hallie, you can try. 35 minutes later, Hallie arrived at the Garden Cafe nestled behind the main hotel building. It was quieter than expected. Only a few guests scattered between the rose bushes and wrought iron tables, sipping lattes in oversized sunglasses, pretending they weren't hungover. Catherine was already there, sitting beneath a tree, sunlight catching in her hair. She was wearing a soft white blouse tucked into dark jeans, casual but polished. She looked up as Hallie approached, and her smile bloomed like it had been waiting all morning just for this. You came, Catherine said, standing to pull a chair aside so Hallie could roll into place. You bribed me, Hallie replied, her voice calm but her pulse pounding. You didn't even ask what kind of coffee I like. I figured you were a triple shot, no foam, light on the sweetness kind of woman. Hallie blinked. You'd be correct. Catherine slid the cup toward her. I'm an excellent guesser. Hallie took a sip. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was full, expectant. So, Catherine said, lacing her fingers on the table, about last night. Hallie raised an eyebrow. Which part? The ex? The confessions? The kiss? All of it, Catherine said. I didn't plan any of that. But I don't regret a second. Hallie stared down at her cup. It felt big. Too big. It was big, Catherine admitted. But sometimes the right things are. Doesn't mean we have to rush into anything. I just want to know where your head is. Hallie hesitated. I don't date. Not really. I don't trust easily. I've been used. I've been paraded. I've been made to feel like someone's charity project more times than I can count. And I've spent years building walls so no one could ever do it again. Catherine didn't flinch. And last night, you broke something open, Hallie said. And I don't know if I'm ready for what's going to spill out. Catherine reached across the table, palm up. Waiting. Always waiting. Hallie looked at her hand for a long time before placing her own there. Then let it spill, Catherine said. I'm not here to fix you. I just want to know you. Hallie's throat tightened. You say all the right things. I say what I mean, Catherine corrected. That's new, Hallie whispered. It shouldn't be, Catherine replied. They sat there, hands clasped, the sounds of birds and distant brunch clatter filling the space around them. Tell me something true, Hallie said suddenly. Something I don't know about you yet. Catherine looked away, a small frown tugging at her lips. Okay, she said softly. Truth? I wasn't just avoiding my ex last night. I was avoiding the pressure. The constant questions about why I'm not settled, why I don't have a real career, why I keep ruining good things. Hallie tilted her head. And do you? Sometimes, Catherine admitted. I get scared when something feels real. I sabotage it. Run before anyone can leave me first. Hallie was quiet. So we're both broken then? No, Catherine said firmly. We're both human. And maybe we're exactly the kind of people who need each other. Hallie exhaled, the weight on her chest slightly lighter now. This doesn't feel like the kind of thing you can just walk away from in the morning. Catherine squeezed her hand. I don't plan to. And for the first time in a long time, Hallie let herself believe it. Not completely. Not forever. But enough. Enough to stay. Enough to hope. The city was already humming by the time they stepped out into it. It wasn't far from the vineyard, just 20 minutes inland, tucked between two sleepy hills and a handful of overpriced bakeries that survived on wedding guests and rich retirees. Catherine had insisted on the detour. Just an hour, she'd said, her eyes bright. There's somewhere I want to show you. Hallie had said yes. Not because she needed more coffee. Not even because she was curious. But because Catherine had looked at her with that quiet urgency again, that need to be understood, to share something real, and Hallie couldn't look away from that. They walked in silence for a few minutes. Catherine slowed her pace to match Hallie's rhythm, never rushing ahead, never falling behind. It wasn't pity. It was instinct. And Hallie noticed. Every little thing. The way Catherine adjusted her body to make space, the way she didn't comment when Hallie chose the curb ramp instead of the stairs, the way she let the world shape itself around them without making it a performance. Where are we going? Hallie finally asked. Catherine pointed ahead. There. It was a mural. A massive wall covered in color, hundreds of names scrawled across a sunburst design, tiny messages tucked between swirling brushstrokes. At the center, two women held hands, faceless but unmistakably lovers, their bodies half blended into the light behind them. Hallie stared. You did this. Years ago, Catherine said, her voice quiet. Before the gallery jobs. Before the commissions. I was crashing on a friend's couch and painting at night to keep from losing my mind. This wall saved me. It was the first time I put something out into the world without apologizing for how much of myself it held. Hallie wheeled closer. The brushwork was raw. Beautiful. Wounds turned into sunlight. You're incredible, she whispered. Catherine smiled. But before she could respond, a voice rang out behind them. Oh my God. You're Hallie Vasquez. Hallie turned. Two women, maybe late 20s, were walking past, phones already in hand. One of them looked breathless. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're the Hallie Vasquez, right? The tech genius? The crypto queen? Hallie straightened slightly, her spine instinctively snapping into CEO mode. I am. We followed the court case. The one with your ex. You were amazing. Ruthless. We talk about it in our business class. Catherine stepped back a little watching. Hallie nodded politely. Thank you. Can we get a picture with you? The other woman asked, already moving closer. My followers will lose it. Hallie hesitated. Her body was tired. Her guard was up. She didn't want Catherine to see her like this, on display. But she'd said yes to worse things.
Sure, she said.
She smiled for the photo, gave them 15 seconds of polite small talk. Then they left, giggling down the sidewalk. And when Hallie turned back, Catherine wasn't smiling. That happen a lot? She asked. People recognizing you? Sometimes. Hallie's voice was guarded now. You looked different, Catherine said carefully. When they approached, you changed. Hallie shrugged. It's part of the job. But you hated it. Does it matter? Hallie snapped, sharper than she meant to. Catherine blinked. It does to me.
Why?
Because I don't know who you are when you're like that. Cold. Removed. And I liked the Hallie who kissed me under the stars, not the one who poses for strangers and shuts down after. Hallie's jaw clenched. You wanted the truth. The truth is, I've spent years being someone people could trust with millions. That doesn't leave room for softness. Or mess. I'm not asking you to be soft for everyone, Catherine said, her voice rising now. Just for me. Maybe I don't know how. The words came out like broken glass. Catherine stepped closer. Then let me help you. Why do you care so much? Hallie said, her voice cracking. You barely know me. One night, a kiss, and now you're suddenly the expert on who I am. Catherine didn't flinch, but her expression shifted, hurt, confused, defensive.
Because I saw you, she said.
And I thought you saw me too. Hallie looked away. Maybe I was wrong. Silence. A deep, terrible silence. Catherine stepped back. You're scared. I get that. But don't punish me for something I haven't done. You don't understand what it's like to have your entire identity turned into a headline, Hallie said. To be reduced to the woman in the chair or the lawsuit or the scandal. You're right, Catherine said. I don't. But I do know what it's like to be lied to.
To be left.
To be made to feel like I'm too much and never enough all at once. I know what it's like to choose someone who doesn't choose me back. Hallie winced. Catherine, no, Catherine said, holding up a hand. I'm not walking away. Not yet. But I won't chase you through a wall you won't even let me knock on. Hallie stared at her. Something inside her twisted painfully. She wanted to reach out, to explain. But all the old instincts kicked in. Lock it down. Look composed. Don't need. Don't want.
Don't break.
Catherine took a slow breath. I'll be at the hotel. If you want to talk, you know where to find me. She turned and walked away, her shoulders tense. Hallie sat there for a long time, the mural at her back, the street moving around her like a storm. She couldn't stop. The sun burned a little too bright now. Her coffee had gone cold. And for the first time in a long time, Hallie didn't feel powerful. She felt like a woman who'd just watched the best thing in her life walk away and didn't know how to bring her back. Hallie had never paced before. Not in the literal sense. But as the wheels of her chair traced the smooth floor of the hotel suite for the 5th time, she realized it was the closest she'd ever come to it. The room was sterile, expensive, impersonal. White orchids in a glass vase, a minibar she hadn't touched, her phone buzzing unanswered beside an untouched plate of breakfast. None of it grounded her. None of it gave her the words she needed. Catherine's voice still echoed inside her head. Don't punish me for something I haven't done. Hallie closed her eyes. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, and for once, not out of work. But because she'd said things she didn't mean to someone who didn't deserve them. Catherine had shown up for her, in the orchard, in the cafe, again and again, and Hallie had chosen fear over truth.
She always did.
But last night, watching Catherine walk away, shoulders tight with the weight of disappointment, something had broken open in her chest. Something stubborn. Something sharp. She didn't want to lose her. Not because of reflexes. Not because of pride. With a shaking breath, Hallie grabbed her phone and checked the message she'd typed and retyped at least 5 times. Hallie, I said the wrong things.
Can we talk? Sent. Seen.
No reply. She didn't wait. She rolled out of the room, into the elevator, and down the corridor until she was outside Catherine's suite. Her hand hovered over the door. She hesitated, heart thudding, then knocked. Nothing. Her stomach twisted. She knocked again. Finally, footsteps. The door cracked open, and Catherine stood there, barefoot, her eyes tired, her hair pulled up in a messy knot. She wore an oversized shirt Hallie didn't recognize, probably borrowed. She looked beautiful in a way that made Hallie ache. "I didn't think you'd come," Catherine said. "I didn't think I'd be brave enough," Hallie admitted. "But I am." Catherine stepped back, silent permission. Hallie rolled in slowly, taking in the space, soft lighting, half-read book on the armrest, and untouched coffee on the table. "I wanted to call," Hallie said, stopping in the center of the room. "But I didn't know if I deserved your voice after the things I said." Catherine didn't speak. She folded her arms and waited. Hallie took a breath. "You were right. I'm scared. I've built my whole life around being untouchable, unshakable, because I thought that's how I had to survive. Every time I've let someone close, it's cost me more than they'll ever know. And I don't know how to trust that you won't be another loss." Catherine's eyes softened, but she didn't move. "Do you think I'm here just to hurt you?" Hallie shook her head.
No.
"That's the worst part. I think you're here for the right reasons. I just don't know if I know how to let that in." Catherine walked closer, not touching, just near enough for Hallie to feel her presence. "Then start with one thing," she said gently. "Tell me one real thing you want from me right now." Hallie looked up, and her voice cracked. "I want you to stay." Catherine's face softened. "Okay." She sat on the couch and patted the space beside her. Hallie wheeled closer, parked, and turned to face her. "You scare me," she said, "because when you look at me, I don't feel like a symbol, or a headline, or a cautionary tale. I feel like me, and I don't remember the last time I liked who that was." Catherine reached over and took her hand. "I like her. I like her a lot." The silence was warm this time, full of the things neither had words for. Hallie's thumb brushed Catherine's knuckles. "I want to try," she said. "Not just this weekend. Not just the moment. I want more. If you do too." Catherine smiled. "I do." They sat there for a long time, close but unhurried, the room thick with peace and promise. Until the knock. A sharp, unexpected knock on Catherine's door. Both women froze. Catherine stood and opened it. Hallie couldn't see who it was, but she heard the voice. Cold. Familiar. Calculated.
Well.
That didn't take long. Hallie's blood turned to ice. Catherine stepped aside, confused, revealing the visitor. A woman in a tailored navy blazer, hair slicked back, lips curled in a cruel smile. "Clarissa," Hallie breathed. The woman stepped inside without asking. "Hello, darling. I saw your name trending again, figured you'd be hiding somewhere romantic. Imagine my surprise to find this." Catherine blinked. "I'm sorry, who?" Hallie's voice was low. "She's my ex." Clarissa smirked. "Ex-fiancé, technically. But who's counting?" Catherine stepped protectively between them. "What do you want?" Clarissa's eyes sparkled with cruelty. "I want to talk to Hallie about some pending business. Some documents she forgot to finalize before disappearing." Hallie's jaw clenched. "This isn't the time." "It is if you want to keep your name out of the press again," Clarissa purred. "You know how fast things spread. A photo here, a comment there. Maybe I tell the world about the NDA breach. The company you built on stolen code. Or the little offshore account you once asked me to get out." Catherine snapped. Clarissa turned slowly. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Catherine said, voice shaking but firm. "Whatever this is, you don't get to come into this room and threaten her."
Not now.
"Not ever." Clarissa raised an eyebrow. How sweet. Protecting the poor broken billionaire. She looked Hallie up and down with disgust. "Still letting everyone believe you're the victim." Hallie didn't move, didn't blink, but her voice was steel. "You're going to leave." Or I'm going to call security. And the next time you come near me with a threat, I'll remind you who taught who how to play dirty. Clarissa's smile faltered. Just for a second. Then she turned, hair whipping behind her. This isn't over, she hissed, slamming the door behind her. Silence fell. Hallie's breathing was shaky. Catherine crossed the room, knelt beside her, hands hovering but not touching. Are you okay? No, Hallie said. But I'm glad you were here. Catherine reached up and cupped her cheek. You don't have to go through any of that alone anymore. Hallie leaned into the touch. Just a little. I'm not sure how to let you fight for me. You don't have to let me, Catherine said. I already am. Hallie didn't sleep. Again. Not even after Catherine curled up beside her on the couch, arm draped protectively across her lap, both of them cloaked in a silence too thick to cut. Clarissa's visit had poisoned the air. Not just with her threats, but with what she represented. The life Hallie had built to survive, now dragging itself back to devour everything she'd started to hope for. Around 4 a.m., Hallie wheeled herself to the balcony and sat in the cool, pre-dawn breeze. Below, the vineyard slept under silver fog, vines curling like secrets around the hills. Her mind was burning. She'd worked too hard to lose everything again. But more than that, she wouldn't, let Catherine be dragged through her damage. And yet, every instinct she had whispered to push her away, protect her, spare her, leave before she leaves you. But Catherine wasn't leaving. Not yet. When morning finally came, Hallie made a decision. She was going to confront it. All of it. She just didn't realize that doing so would tear a hole in everything she and Catherine had started to build. Catherine sipped her coffee slowly, perched on the hotel bed, still wrapped in a robe and watching Hallie dress in silence. The tension was different now, more cautious than cold. Like they were both holding their breath. You're really going to meet her? Catherine finally asked. Hallie nodded, slipping her blazer over her shoulders. Clarissa doesn't bluff. If I don't contain her, she'll escalate. She threatened you, Catherine said, frowning. She threatened us. And now you're just going to walk into a private meeting with her? I'm not walking, Hallie said flatly, then softened. And I won't be alone. I called my attorney. He's meeting me in the city. Catherine's jaw tensed. You still haven't told me what she has on you. Hallie adjusted her watch. Because if I say it out loud, I make it real. It is real, Catherine said. And I'm already in it. So stop pretending this is about protecting me and tell me the truth. Hallie sighed. Long, heavy. Clarissa helped me start one of my earliest companies. I gave her access to everything, emails, finances, code, even offshore assets. Offshore. It wasn't illegal, Hallie said quickly. Just aggressive.
Risky.
And Clarissa knew how to spin it. So, she's threatening to go public? She's threatening to claim she was coerced, Hallie said. That I manipulated her. That the power dynamic made consent impossible. That I left her with nothing after the breakup. Which isn't true. But if she controls the narrative, it won't matter. Catherine's heart dropped. Do you think she'd really do that? I know she would. Hallie's voice was ice. She's already planted rumors. Articles. Anonymous sources. I can't afford another scandal, not now. Catherine stood. Then let me come with you. No, why not? Hallie turned to face her. Because if she sees you, she'll go after you next. She'll twist everything. She'll call you my rebound, my distraction, my mistake. I don't care what she says. But I do, Hallie said, voice rising. I can't drag you into this mess. You don't know how brutal it gets when it starts unraveling. Catherine stepped closer. I don't want protection. I want partnership. And I want to keep you, Hallie snapped. But I won't do it by feeding you to someone like her. Catherine flinched. So, what? Are you cutting me out now? Is this the part where you pull away to save me because you're scared of being chosen? Hallie's silence said enough. Catherine took a step back.
Wow.
You really don't get it. I didn't fall for Hallie Vasquez, the billionaire. I fell for the woman under all that armor. But if you're going to lock me out every time it gets hard, It's not about locking you out, Hallie shouted. It's about surviving. Catherine stared at her, eyes glistening. Then I guess I'm just one more thing you survive. Ella turned, grabbed her keys, and left. The meeting with Clarissa was as vile as Hallie expected. Her ex showed up at the law firm wearing power heels and poison lipstick, tossing out smug smiles and legal jargon like confetti. Hallie said almost nothing. Her lawyer handled the rest, pushing for clarification, recording every threat, narrowing the options. It didn't take long for Clarissa to slip, to admit she had no documents. Just screenshots, implications, bitterness dressed in strategy. The lawyer promised to file an injunction and a defamation warning. Clarissa's smile cracked. Just for a second. Then she left, venom still clinging to her heels. But Hallie didn't feel like she'd won. She felt empty. Because she'd built this fortress of logic, of contracts and counterattacks, but it didn't protect her from the thing that mattered. Catherine was gone. It was late when Hallie returned to the hotel. Her body ached. Her spine screamed. Her arms trembled from hours of strain. But none of it compared to the silence waiting in the room. Catherine hadn't come back. Her things were gone. Just the book on the armrest remained. Hallie rolled toward it, staring down at the open page. A sticky note sat inside. You don't have to protect me from your past. But if you keep choosing fear over us, eventually, I won't be there to choose at all. See. Hallie's heart broke so quietly it didn't even make a sound. She closed the book, let it rest against her chest, and whispered into the dark, Please don't give up on me. Hallie Vasquez wasn't used to silence. Her world was one of noise. Contracts, negotiations, click-clack heels in glass offices, headlines blaring her name in bold font. Noise was armor. Noise was power. But now, alone in that empty hotel suite, all she had was silence. And it was deafening. Catherine was gone. She'd left with a warning, not a door slam. With care, not rage. That was worse. Hallie had faced boardrooms full of men who wanted to see her fail, and she never blinked. But this quiet ache behind her ribs, this emptiness in a room that once held laughter and something dangerously close to peace. It was breaking her in ways no scandal ever could. She stared at the sticky note again. If you keep choosing fear over us, eventually, I won't be there to choose at all. She ran a hand through her hair, the exhaustion hitting in full. Catherine had asked for partnership. She'd asked for honesty. And Hallie had given her distance and control. She thought she was protecting her. But she wasn't. She was protecting herself. And now she was alone. Again. Unless she did something she'd never done before. Unless she stopped treating love like a negotiation. Hallie grabbed her phone and called her assistant. I need the contact for Melissa Young at Channel 8. Hallie, it's Sunday. She's now. And find out if her Sunday segment is still live at 6 p.m. There was a pause. Then, I'll make it happen. She hung up and closed her eyes. This was reckless. This was public. This was everything she hated. But it was the only way to speak loud enough for Catherine to hear her, wherever she was. Catherine sat alone in her tiny rental car parked just outside the city. Her suitcase was in the trunk. Her phone hadn't buzzed once. She told herself she'd give Hallie space. That walking away had been the right thing. But God, it hurt. She had let herself hope. She had let herself feel. And now she was back to the familiar echo of abandonment. The difference was, this time, she had fallen for someone who had everything and still didn't know how to let herself be loved. Catherine sniffed and rubbed her eyes, flipping through stations on the radio just to distract herself. Classical.
Jazz.
Then static. And then, tonight's special segment features an unexpected face, billionaire Hallie Vasquez, known for her tech empire and fierce privacy, has agreed to a rare live appearance. Let's tune in. Catherine froze. Her fingers hovered over the dial. Her heart stopped. Then she turned it up. The studio lights were blinding. The anchor smiled politely, eyes hungry for a headline. Hallie sat across from her in a navy suit, hair pulled back tight, but something in her face was different. Open.
Raw.
Ms. Vasquez, the anchor began, people are wondering why you suddenly agreed to appear on air. Is there something you'd like to address? Hallie nodded.
Yes.
There's a rumor about to break. About my past. About a former partner who's threatening to manipulate the truth for her own gain. Is that rumor true? The truth, Hallie said slowly, is that I made mistakes. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I gave power to the wrong hands. But I did not manipulate. I did not coerce. And I have nothing to hide anymore. The anchor blinked. That's a bold statement. Hallie turned to the camera. What I do regret is the damage I've caused by staying silent. Not just professionally, but personally.
She paused.
Breathed. Then, there's someone I met recently. Someone who saw through all of this. All the headlines and walls and fear.
She saw me.
And I pushed her away. Because I was afraid that if she really knew me, she'd run. Her voice cracked. But she didn't run. I did. And I'm done running. Catherine's breath caught as the radio played on. So, if you're watching this, Hallie said, her voice low but sure, I want you to know that I choose you. Not just when it's easy. Especially when it's not. I choose your honesty, your chaos, your strength. I choose every part of you that makes me feel like myself again.
A beat.
Come back to me, Catherine. The anchor blinked, stunned. Hallie looked directly into the camera. That's all. And then she stood, walked off set. No press release. No cleanup. Just truth. Catherine didn't even realize she was crying until the windshield blurred. She threw the car into drive and took off, adrenaline and something else, hope, racing in her blood. She didn't call first.
She didn't text.
She just drove. 40 minutes later, she was standing in front of Hallie's suite door, heartbeat loud in her throat. She raised her fist to knock. The door opened before she could. Hallie stood there, breathless, barefoot, like she'd been waiting. Catherine stared at her. You really said all that? On national television. I did. You know how insane that is, right? Insane is letting you walk away thinking I didn't want you. Catherine shook her head, half laughing, half crying. I'm still mad at you. I deserve that. You hurt me. I know. You can't fix this with a speech. I'm not trying to fix it, Hallie said, voice breaking. I'm trying to start over. With the truth. Catherine's face softened, but her guard was still up. What happens the next time you get scared? I tell you, and I let you stay, even when every part of me wants to run. Silence fell, and then Catherine stepped forward.
Slowly.
Measured. I came back, she whispered. I wasn't sure I would. Hallie reached for her hand. But you did. Don't make me regret it. Never again. Catherine let herself fall into Hallie's arms, awkward and tight and real. Hallie's chair didn't matter. Her past didn't matter. Only this did. Only now. Their lips met again, and this time it wasn't tentative. It was full of everything they hadn't said, every promise, every apology, every spark and scar and second chance wrapped into one breathless kiss. And somewhere between the heartbeat and the silence, Catherine whispered, Don't let me go. And Hallie answered, Not in this life. Hallie didn't tell anyone where they were going. Not her assistant, not her legal team, not the 2 journalists still camped in her inbox begging for exclusive follow-ups after the interview. For the first time in years, she turned everything off, her phone, her schedule, her walls. It was her idea. She'd looked at Catherine that morning, hours after they had finally fallen asleep tangled in warmth and tension and apology, and said simply, Let's go somewhere. Just us. Catherine didn't ask questions. She just packed a bag. They drove north, toward the cliffs, toward quiet. Hallie handled the route, programmed every stop into the car's GPS. The trip had been in her mind for years. A remote cabin on the coast, once used for investor retreats before she stopped doing the whole corporate bonding charade. It was isolated, soundproofed, surrounded by trees and salt air. No press. No demands. No Clarissa. Just space. And Catherine. The road twisted around fog-covered hills as they climbed, the ocean flashing in glimpses through pines. Catherine rolled the windows down halfway, letting in the cold breeze, her hand reaching for Hallie's on the console without a word. Hallie glanced sideways, catching the wind in Catherine's hair, her face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen since that first night at the wedding. "You're really not going to tell me where we're going?" Catherine asked eventually. "I'm kidnapping you," Hallie said. "It's a very glamorous hostage situation, with leather seats and homemade playlists. I have standards and snacks, obviously. Then I surrender." Catherine leaned over and kissed her cheek. It was so easy in that moment, so light. But Hallie knew what was waiting under the surface. She'd spent too long building herself out of secrets. And even with Catherine beside her, even with her choosing to stay, there was still one truth she hadn't told her. Not because she didn't trust her, but because the words had become sharp over time. Fragile. Dangerous. She told herself she'd find the right moment. When the cabin came into view, nestled between pines and fog like a secret, Catherine whistled low. "Okay, now I'm impressed. Takes a fortress to disarm a general," Hallie said. "And you're a general? Of self-preservation?" "Absolutely." Inside, the cabin was warm wood and glass, with a fireplace already prepped and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. Catherine dropped her bag and turned in place, taking it all in. "Is this where you hide when the world gets too loud?" "I never hid here," Hallie said. "I worked here, strategized, built. And now I want to learn how to be quiet in it." Catherine walked over to her and rested a hand on the back of Hallie's neck, thumb brushing the base of her hair. "Then let's make it quiet together." For the next 2 days, they did. They cooked together, danced barefoot in the kitchen to vintage playlists, read chapters of the same book out loud under the covers, kissed slowly in front of the fire with no clock ticking behind them. Hallie showed Catherine how to build a fire. Catherine taught Hallie how to play the ukulele, badly. Hallie fell asleep with her head against Catherine's thigh one afternoon and woke up to fingers in her hair and the soft hum of a lullaby she didn't recognize. It should have been perfect, but Hallie could feel the secret growing heavier inside her. She knew she had to tell Catherine that she couldn't keep hiding the one thing that still sat between them. And just when she was about to speak, it was Catherine who broke the spell. They were sitting on the back deck in the late afternoon sun, wrapped in a shared blanket, sipping from mismatched mugs, when Catherine said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth." Hallie turned to her, throat tightening. "Okay." "Clarissa said something. That she helped you set up offshore accounts. That she was the one who planted the foundation for one of your big acquisitions." Hallie's jaw clenched. "She's twisting. I know she is. But I looked it up. There's a shadow firm registered under your name. And it does trace back to the early years of your company. You've never mentioned it. Not once. Why?" Hallie set her mug down slowly. "Because it was a mistake. One I buried." "Was it illegal?" Catherine's voice didn't tremble. It wasn't accusatory. It was searching. Not technically, but close enough that you're still afraid of it. Hallie stood suddenly, wheeled away from the blanket, the comfort, the softness. She faced the trees. "It was a shell company. We funneled money through it to secure a merger faster. I told myself it was just strategy. Everyone did it. But when I tried to dissolve it after Clarissa left, she kept part of the trail intact. She wanted leverage, insurance. And now I'm exposed. Not to the courts, but to the court of public opinion. And that's just as lethal." Catherine stood behind her, silent for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought if you knew who I really was, the corners I've cut, the compromises I've made, you wouldn't stay." "So, you were planning on just letting me fall for the edited version of you?" "No," Hallie said, turning to face her. "I was planning on telling you. I just didn't know how to do it without ruining everything good between us." Catherine stepped forward. "You don't ruin things by telling the truth. You ruin them by hiding it until it's too late." Hallie swallowed hard. "Is it too late?" Catherine didn't answer at first. Her eyes were glassy. "I don't know. I want to believe in you. I do. But I need to know that I'm not just another thing you'll keep in the dark when it gets complicated. Hallie reached for her hand. You're not. Then show me. No more filters. No more edits. Just you. Okay. Hallie nodded. Okay. But inside, she knew it wasn't that simple. Love wasn't a matter of yes or no. It was trust. And trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick. And sometimes, the foundation cracked when you weren't watching. As the sun set, they stood together in the silence, the weight of truth between them. It hadn't broken them. Not yet. But the fault lines were there, waiting. The silence between them followed them back to the city. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was careful. Like they were both holding something too delicate to name, terrified that speaking too loudly might shatter it for good. Hallie drove this time, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on her thigh, fingers twitching occasionally like they wanted to reach for Catherine but didn't know how. Catherine stared out the window most of the way, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, her jaw set.
She hadn't yelled.
She hadn't accused. She hadn't left. But she also hadn't touched Hallie since that conversation on the deck. And that absence was louder than any slammed door. They arrived at Hallie's penthouse just before sunset. The building loomed like a fortress of glass and steel, tall and cold and painfully impersonal. It was the first time Catherine had been there. It didn't feel like home. Not to her. Maybe not even to Hallie. Inside, everything was pristine. Polished floors. Minimalist decor. A view that could swallow the sky. But it was sterile. Silent. Designed for efficiency, not comfort. Hallie watched Catherine step through the space like she was studying a museum exhibit. Do you live here? Catherine asked quietly. Or just exist here? Both, Hallie said. Neither. I don't know anymore. Catherine walked to the windows. You've built a world so controlled that nothing can touch you. Not grief. Not joy. Not even love. Hallie's voice cracked. I'm trying to unlearn that. Then you have to let it be messy.
You have to let me in.
Hallie rolled closer, stopping a few feet behind her. I want to. I swear to you, Catherine. I've spent so long surviving, I don't always recognize what it means to live. Catherine turned. Her eyes were soft, but guarded. Then let me show you. But I can't keep knocking on a door that you keep half closed. Hallie didn't answer. Because she couldn't promise what she wasn't sure she could deliver. But before either of them could say more, Hallie's phone buzzed. Not her personal line. The other one. The encrypted one. Catherine noticed the shift in her face immediately. What is it? Trouble, Hallie said, swiping the screen. She didn't answer the call. She opened a secure file.
Read.
Went pale. Clarissa just filed a formal complaint. With the board of my holding company. For what? Misuse of funds. Manipulation of company assets. She's claiming emotional coercion during the merger process. Is there any proof?
No.
But it doesn't matter. Her timing is perfect. We're in the middle of a tech acquisition that could implode if this goes public. Catherine stepped closer. What do you need? Hallie stared at her. I need to bury this.
Fast. Quietly.
I need to call my crisis team and stop this story from leaking. And what about the truth?
Catherine asked.
What about everything you said on that broadcast? That you were done hiding? This isn't hiding. This is damage control. No, Hallie, Catherine said, voice rising. This is fear. Again. You don't understand what's at stake. Then make me understand. Hallie's temper snapped. My entire empire, Catherine. Everything I've built. Hundreds of employees. Billions in contracts. If this scandal breaks, I lose everything. What about me? Catherine whispered. Do you lose me too? Hallie froze. What if I can have both? The words slipped out before she could stop them. And Catherine's face crumpled. Then I'm already gone. She grabbed her bag. Hallie reached for her. Wait. No. Catherine said, stepping back. I love you, Hallie. But I won't compete with your empire. I won't fight for space next to a woman who keeps choosing control over connection. It's not a choice. It always is. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut. Hallie sat there, the weight of her silence pressing down like stone. Her phone buzzed again. Her crisis team. Her lawyer. Her COO. All wanting answers. All wanting strategy. All wanting Hallie Vasquez, the woman who always had a plan. But for the first time, Hallie didn't have one. Because all she could see was Catherine, walking out of the room like she'd finally run out of reasons to stay. That night, Hallie didn't sleep.
She didn't speak.
She didn't answer a single call. She sat in the dark, in a penthouse that echoed like a cave, staring at the door and praying that maybe, just maybe, it would open again. It didn't. Hallie Vasquez wasn't used to silence. Not at first. What killed her was the sound. The click of Catherine's heels fading down the hall. The chime of the elevator swallowing her. The muted slam of the lobby door echoing all the way up to the penthouse. That was the moment it happened. That was the moment Hallie realized she hadn't just lost a woman. She'd lost her compass. Her center. Her reason. She sat in the dark long after the last of the daylight vanished behind the skyline, her phone buzzing every few minutes with new demands, new threats, new fires she was expected to extinguish. But she didn't move. Not when her lawyer called to say Clarissa's statement had leaked. Not when the press began circling like sharks. Not when the board sent a formal inquiry. Not when hashtags with her name began trending again, this time next to words like manipulator and fraud. She didn't move because none of it mattered. None of it. Not without Catherine. At 4:17 a.m., her assistant finally called using the emergency override. Hallie, I need you to answer me. The voice said, urgent and breathless. They're talking about pulling your chair from the board. The acquisition is suspended. Your CFO just quit. I need to know what you want to do. Hallie looked out the window at a city that once bowed to her name. And she finally spoke. Let it fall. I'm sorry, what?
Let it
fall. The words tasted like freedom and ash. Cancel everything. Close the deal. I'm done fighting for something that never loved me back. Hallie, she hung up. Then she turned off her phone completely. For the first time in over a decade, Hallie Vasquez disconnected. And then, without ceremony, without press, without anyone watching, she packed a single bag, left the penthouse, and disappeared. Catherine didn't cry after leaving. Not at first. She drove home, windows down, throat tight, mind loud. She replayed every moment, every kiss, every promise, every wall. And then, around midnight, she sat on her apartment floor with Hallie's book still in her lap, the sticky note tucked between the pages, and broke. Not because Hallie didn't love her, but because she did and couldn't love herself enough to let it matter. She didn't know what hurt more, that Hallie had chosen fear again, or that Catherine had finally stopped chasing her. For the next 3 days, she turned off her own phone, turned down her brother's invitations, ignored her mother's calls. She worked, slept badly, went to the market and stared at fruit she didn't buy. Everything felt muted, incomplete, until day 4. The morning news lit up with the headline, Vasquez steps down. Empire in freefall. Catherine dropped her spoon. The anchor's voice was clinical, detached. After days of silence, Hallie Vasquez has officially withdrawn from her position as CEO, effective immediately. Sources confirm she's taken no severance package, declined all interviews, and left behind a signed statement. Some legacies are built on silence. I'd rather start over with truth. Catherine stood slowly. Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone and opened her messages. Nothing. No missed calls. No texts. Just the memory of that last night. But then she noticed something else. A letter. In her mailbox. No return address. Just her name, written in Hallie's unmistakable handwriting. Her heart leapt and sank at the same time. She tore it open. Catherine, if you're reading this, it's because I couldn't find the courage to say these words while you were still within reach. You asked me once what I wanted. I never answered, Because what I want has always terrified me. I want you, your stubbornness, your softness, your truth. I want to wake up to your hair in my face and your laugh in my kitchen. I want to spend the rest of my life unlearning everything that taught me love was weakness. I want to make space for you in a life I never thought I'd share. And if I have to burn my name to the ground to do that, I will. Because the empire was built to protect me. But you made me feel alive. If you're willing, I'll be at the mural. The one where the women hold hands in the sunlight. The one you said made you feel like love could be art. I'll wait until sunset. No pressure. No expectations. Just truth. Catherine didn't grab her coat. She didn't check the time. She just ran. The sun was low when she reached the wall. The city buzzed behind her, loud and unaware. But there, at the base of that mural, Hallie sat. No security. No headlines. Just her. Dressed in soft denim and a loose black sweater, her hair slightly windswept, eyes locked on the painted hands at the center of the mural. She looked so human. So quiet. So completely undone. Catherine stopped a few feet away. You left the empire. Hallie turned. Her face lit up with relief, with fear, with everything she hadn't let herself feel before. I had nothing left to fight for, if it meant losing you. Catherine stepped closer. You really were going to let it all burn? It was already burning, Hallie whispered. Stocks dropped. The acquisition dissolved entirely. Her board released a statement that used cold words like transition, review, and ethical concerns. And yet Hallie didn't hide. Not once. She and Catherine stayed quiet, but not silent. They moved together through the storm, choosing privacy without secrecy. Catherine painted like she was exorcising ghosts. Hallie wrote long-form essays, anonymous blog entries, pieces about legacy, pain, control, the myth of perfection. She stopped hiding in rooms designed to protect her. She let herself be seen. For the first time, truly seen. One afternoon, Catherine found her asleep on the studio floor, her cane resting against the wall, open notebooks scattered like petals. She didn't wake her. She just laid down beside her and rested her hand over Hallie's chest. The heartbeat was slow, steady, human. And hers. 3 weeks passed. Quiet. Steady. Until the letter came. Hand-delivered. Heavy paper. No return address. Just Hallie's name, written in black ink. She opened it on the balcony. Catherine beside her, their fingers brushing. Inside, an invitation.
To speak.
A national conference on ethical innovation. Former CEOs.
Tech activists.
Women in power. It was a panel, one titled Rebuilding After the Fall. The irony made Hallie laugh. But Catherine read the letter twice, then looked at her. You should do it.
Why?
Hallie asked. I'm not the hero in this story. Because the world needs to see you now. Not as an icon. As a woman who fell, owned it, and got back up. What if I say the wrong thing? Then you say it. And we learn. Together. Hallie stared at the letter. Will you be there? Catherine smiled. Front row. Always. Hallie accepted the invitation. They flew out 2 weeks later. The venue was a restored opera house, glass domes and velvet curtains, filled with polished people wearing unspoken expectations. Hallie wore black. Minimalist. No jewelry. No script. She asked Catherine to walk with her to the stage entrance. The cane clicked gently against the marble floor. Every step was earned. You good? Catherine asked. Hallie looked at her. Ask me again when I'm off that stage.
Deal.
The auditorium buzzed. Cameras pointed. The lights were too bright. Hallie stepped up to the podium and stood for a moment, her hand steadying against the edge. The crowd waited. Then she began. I used to believe power meant never having to say the words. I was wrong. A ripple moved through the room. I used to think control was the same thing as safety. That silence was strength. That being untouchable was something to be proud of.
She paused.
Let it land. But the truth is, silence is a prison. And the moment I started building walls to keep the world out, I also locked myself inside. She spoke for 11 minutes. About ambition.
About fear.
About the woman who made her want to live instead of just survive. She didn't name Catherine, but she didn't need to. It was in every word, every pause, every crack in her voice that she didn't bother to hide. When she finished, the crowd stood. Catherine clapped the hardest. That night, after the dinner, after the press, after the whispered, "She's changed" comments in the hallway, Hallie and Catherine returned to the hotel room and said nothing for a long time. They just held each other, bare feet on the rug, wine untouched on the table. Then Hallie pulled a small box from her bag. Simple. Black velvet. Catherine blinked. "Hallie, I'm not proposing," Hallie said.
Yet.
"I'm not ready for that."
Not yet.
"But I want to give you this." She opened the box. Inside was a ring. Silver. Understated. Engraved with one word on the inside.
Stay.
Catherine's breath caught. "You want me to wear this?" "Only if you want to," Hallie said softly. "It's not a symbol of ownership. It's not a promise I won't mess up. It's just a reminder that I'm not running anymore. That when I get scared, I'll reach for you instead of my silence." Catherine took the ring. Slid it on. It fit. Of course it did. "I'm still mad at you sometimes," she whispered. "I know. And I'm still scared of how much I need you." "Me too." Catherine leaned in. "But I'm not going anywhere." "Good," Hallie said, kissing her. "Because next time, I am proposing." "Terrifying," Catherine whispered against her lips. "But I'll think about saying yes." "Take your time. Forever if I have to." "I've got time now." They laughed.
Kissed again.
And somewhere in the quiet between one kiss and the next, Hallie finally believed it. She hadn't lost everything. She'd finally found something that couldn't be taken away. Something hers. Something real. 1 year later, the world had moved on, but Hallie hadn't. Not from her. Not from them. She didn't need to. Catherine was still beside her, breathing the same morning air, drinking the same bitter coffee, whispering the same sarcastic remarks when interviews got too self-congratulatory. They had rebuilt slowly, brick by honest brick, no shortcuts, no illusions. There were still scars on both of them. Hallie still froze sometimes when her phone buzzed unexpectedly. Catherine still got quiet when Hallie closed herself off in thought for too long. But they had learned to name it, to talk, to touch instead of retreat, to hold instead of control. Catherine's art had exploded. The gallery shows sold out. Magazines wanted interviews. Collectors' bid numbers Catherine laughed at because they felt ridiculous. She painted with the kind of freedom Hallie recognized, the freedom of someone who had finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Hallie, meanwhile, stayed quiet by design. She consulted for nonprofits, taught a few private lectures, wrote. Her essays were taught in classrooms now, dissected by students who once would have worshipped her empire. She didn't miss it, not even a little. One evening, they sat side by side on the rooftop of their shared apartment. No penthouse, just a small place with creaky floors and a view of the river. Catherine held a letter in her hands. She hadn't opened it yet, but Hallie already knew what was inside. "Paris," Catherine said finally, voice quiet. 2-year residency. They want me to help curate a new collection and run workshops for local artists. And it's everything I ever dreamed of. Hallie nodded. "Then go." Catherine turned sharply. "That's it? You're not going to ask me to stay. Do you want me to?" "I don't know." Catherine's voice cracked. "Part of me wants you to fight for this. For us." Hallie reached out and took her hand. "I'm not fighting against your dreams to keep you in mine. I promised I'd never be the reason you stayed small. You're not. But I could be. If I ask you to stay when the world's asking you to fly." "It's not the world I care about," Catherine whispered. "It's you. I'll be here. When you're done. Or when you want me to visit. Or if you want me to come with you." "You'd move to Paris?" "I'd follow your voice anywhere. But only if it's you asking. Not your guilt." Catherine leaned her forehead against Hallie's. "I don't want to lose you." "You won't. I'm not going anywhere, even if we're not in the same place. And what if the time apart breaks us? Hallie smiled softly. Then it wasn't strong enough to begin with. But I think we are. Catherine didn't speak for a long time. The sky was dark by now, stars beginning to peek through. Then she whispered, "Will you still wear the ring?" Hallie raised her left hand, silver glinting faintly in the city light. "I never took it off." Catherine kissed her. Slow, gentle, final but not ending. A beginning in disguise. 1 month later, they said goodbye at the airport. No drama, no scene, just a kiss that lingered too long and a promise spoken in 2 words. Come back. Catherine did. Not right away, but she called every day. Sent voice notes of rain against Paris windows. Pictures of her studio, her paint-splattered hands, the cafes she wanted Hallie to see. Hallie wrote her letters. Old-fashioned. Pages filled with words she didn't always say out loud. On Catherine's birthday, Hallie flew to Paris with no announcement and showed up at the gallery with a single sunflower and an expression that said, "You are still my favorite work of art." Catherine cried. They made love that night like it was the first time all over again. And this time, when Hallie whispered, "Marry me," Catherine whispered yes. 3 years later, they exchanged vows in a garden filled with every color Catherine had ever painted, every story Hallie had ever written. Hallie didn't walk down the aisle. She rolled proudly, her chair decorated with ivy and yellow silk. Catherine met her halfway. They stood side by side, rings already warm in their palms, hands trembling together. There were no speeches, just a promise, soft and certain. Whatever comes next, we choose it. Together. And that was it. Not a fairy tale. A life.
Honest. Flawed.
Glorious. And theirs. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.